I want to talk about the issue going on in Brazil with X. Brazil is trying to get X banned in its country. Brazil's Supreme Court claims that Elon Musk is spreading disinformation. And, Elon Musk in this scenario is the only thing standing between, democracy and totalitarianism in Brazil right now. The Brazilian government reportedly has told ex-employees in Brazil that they will be arrested, according to Musk. And I said according to Musk, but just recently, even before I start this pod, the Supreme Court confirmed this, that the ex-employees in Brazil have been warned that they will be arrested if they don't cooperate and help Brazil to censor free speech. And, free speech is a fundamental part of a free democracy. Disinformation is not a threat when it comes from the citizens. And you want to know why? Because if you're curious enough on a topic to see if someone is speaking the truth, then you can do that. And, I liken free speech to sort of a laissez-faire economy. You give total freedom to free speech and the truth will ultimately prevail. Because the people who spread disinformation will get corrected and mocked. And they'll get corrected and mocked by the educated people who value truth. And if you just want to blindly listen to disinformation without doing the research yourself, then, you would find a way to be an idiot anyways. That's just the truth. And the truth will ultimately prevail with freedom of speech. And, X's community notes are a great system that were in place to correct disinformation on the platform. But lies will always be corrected with freedom of speech. And, it always finds a way. And if it's not on a minor scale, then, do your own research. And people who don't do their own research, they're going to be sheep and follow whatever they're told anyways. It's not Elon Musk's responsibility in that way. It's not Elon Musk's responsibility to make sure everybody's not blindly following crazy statements made on his platform. His responsibility is to promote free speech, put in place things like community notes that correct things that are just blatantly wrong. And like I said, with freedom of speech and you allow all speech to be spoken, the truth will ultimately prevail because the people who value truth will correct the people who are blatantly spreading lies and disinformation. So disinformation, when coming from the citizens in a democracy where freedom of speech is allowed, is not really a threat because it will correct itself. There's enough people who value truth, who are educated enough on topics and fight for truth, they will correct the disinformation on a widespread scale. And like I said, on the isolated incidents where, somebody sees something and if they're curious enough to know what the truth is, they will look it up and do their own research themselves. That's really our responsibility as citizens. And the people who don't and blindly listen to it, then they were kind of a lost cause anyways in that way. That's why I believe on it. That's free speech. Truth will prevail in a sort of laissez-faire way of just letting all speech to be free. But when the government is to decide what can and can't be said, then that's no longer a free democracy. That's totalitarianism. And let's say that they are well-intentioned and that they truly are trying to, quote, save democracy like they like to say when they're wanting censorship, which is oxymoronic. That sets a precedent where governments are now allowed to censor people that they don't like and to spread its own propaganda, aka totalitarianism, like what you see in China and Russia. What's happening in Brazil is incredibly important right now because not only is it important for Brazil and its democracy, but, quote, democracy. Brazil is trending towards it's not trending towards a good way with its government. And this is a great example of that. But this is also important for democracies globally because this sets a precedent. X, I believe, is the greatest platform for free speech on earth, and it must stand to allow people to speak openly and say what is on their minds. Even if you want to spread disinformation, you should be allowed to do that because you will ultimately be corrected. That's how it works. The truth ultimately prevails, period. But it has to be allowed to do that. It can't have restrictions on it because when you have restrictions on speech, the people who truly want to spread disinformation, and it's not Elon Musk, it's people like the people in the Brazilian government and people in the United States government, they want to spread their own agendas and their own propaganda. And free speech stands in the way of that because people will ultimately correct them. So them trying to get rid of free speech proves my point, because they know that they will be openly corrected and mocked by the people who are educated and value truth when they're openly spreading lies. I mean, if you don't believe me, go to any X post on Joe Biden and go to the comments. It's filled with people just openly mocking him and telling him how he's lying blatantly when he says that. So, and not only Joe Biden, any politician. And, Community Notes is a great example of that. You had Community Notes. There's a community note on an FBI post. So there's no boundaries. There's no, the government is, you can't be touched with the government on correcting their lies. The government trying to censor free speech proves my point that they know that their lies and misinformation cannot stand with free speech. There has to be censorship in place, and there has to be checks to where free speech can't prevail, because that's the only way that lies will prevail. Truth will ultimately prevail with freedom of people to speak. And, saying that people have the right to lie doesn't mean you support it, or that you think that people should lie. But what you're saying is you're allowing free speech for everyone, because that also means you can't put restrictions on people who want to spread disinformation, because that's not free speech. That's not a free democracy for everyone to openly speak what's on their mind. So, like I said, people want to spread disinformation. The truth will ultimately prevail with freedom of speech. The truth will always prevail. And the people who want to get rid of free speech, they're the ones that want to spread disinformation. It's not Elon Musk and X. The people who want to control free speech, they don't want a free democracy. They want totalitarianism. They want control. They want to control the narrative, because that's the only way that they achieve their agendas. That's the only way that they get what they want. And they want to brainwash people. If you notice, the fight for censorship is only on one side of the aisle, and it's the left. It's not the right. The right wants free speech, and they're the ones that are attacked most by the media. They're the ones that are attacked most by, media platforms for their political ideologies. Sorry. The left is not attacked nearly as much by mainstream media as the right is. So they should be the ones, theoretically, that would want censorship and control. Like, if Trump was really the dictator and authoritarian that the left likes to say he is, then he should have been the one that would promote, censorship and free speech. If he truly is that authoritarian leader that they said that he is, he didn't. The left is, and Biden is, and they like to say that this is a fight for democracy. It's completely stupid and ironic, because the basic fundamental part of democracy is free speech and people being able to speak what's on their mind. If somebody disagrees with you, they're able to say their opinions just as much as you, and you guys can have a discourse and a debate on it. But just because you don't like what somebody's saying doesn't mean that they don't have a right to say it, or shouldn't have a right to say it. Free speech is a basic fundamental part of a democracy, and without free speech, then that is, you start to trend towards totalitarianism, and this is what we're seeing in Brazil right now. So, like I said, just because you're saying somebody should have a right to spread lies, and Elon Musk is simply giving a platform for free speech, and somebody who wants to spread misinformation has just as much of a right to do that as people who want to spread the truth, because the truth will ultimately win. The people who are spreading misinformation will be corrected and mocked, and the truth should be at your fingertips and available. So if you see something, you want to validate for yourself if it's true, then you have the right to go and do your own research on that, and you can ultimately decide if it's true. That's our responsibility as citizens. Wanting to control speech on a wide scale, you don't have that anymore. You're told what the government tells you, and that's where you trend towards a totalitarian government. So free speech needs to be protected in democracies. It is a basic fundamental part of a democracy. And, I don't think Brazil will ultimately win, but right now it's setting a precedent for countries globally, including the United States, because we know how much Joe Biden hates Elon Musk and the left hates Elon Musk. Why? Because he's for free speech, and they don't want free speech. They want to control the narrative. Anybody who wants to promote free speech is a threat to the left, and they're insecure in their own lies. They don't want the truth out. And obviously the Republican Party is not scared of free speech. Why? Because they're secure in their own beliefs, and if somebody disagrees with them, they're okay with that because they can have a back and forth, and they know that the truth will ultimately prevail. And that's what will happen with no restrictions on free speech. The truth will ultimately prevail. That's why only one side wants censorship, and it's not the right. So fingers crossed that this doesn't come to happen in Brazil, where X is taken away from Brazil. I don't think it ultimately will, but when you have the Supreme Court doing this, then it makes you wonder, who's going to have the authority to stop them. I think ultimately X will be able to be open in Brazil, but if it doesn't, then that's just a precedent for countries globally to be able to just get rid of platforms that promote free speech and is a threat to their own agendas and their own narratives. And I say that including the United States, and which is scary, but it's the truth. So let's hope that Brazil does the right thing and free speech will prevail.